Tonight, you'll probably do what you always do. Put your baby to bed in a nursery equipped with a smart monitor, tuck them under an expensive organic cotton blanket, close the door, and head to the living room to scroll on your phone. To you, this feels completely normal. But for 99.9% of human history, leaving a newborn alone in the dark was the mathematical equivalent of serving a fresh plate of sashimi right in front of a predator. Any creature within a 1-mile radius that could smell protein would view your child as the perfect biological target. Human babies are the most fragile, helpless creatures on Earth. Raising an infant is, historically, the hardest thing our species has ever had to face. Every single one of your ancestors had to confront this exact same challenge. Consider this. A newborn fawn can sprint across the savannah just hours after birth. Baby chimpanzee drops into the world, ready to cling tightly to its mother's fur for dear life. But humans, our babies, can't even support the weight of their own heads. They can't walk, they can't forage, they have zero defensive capabilities, and they don't even know how to stay quiet to hide from predators. Yet, against all odds, our ancestors pulled it off, and uncovering the truth of how they did it might just completely shatter everything you think you know about parenting, family, and how the human body was truly designed. To understand why this happened, we need to talk about one of the most epic, unfinished patch jobs in evolutionary history. Simply put, evolution, that stingy programmer, tried to copy-paste two completely contradictory skill trees into our DNA at the same time. The first skill? Walking upright. It was a massive buff. It freed up our hands so we could grab weapons and hurl rocks. But it came with a brutal side effect. To make walking energy efficient, our pelvises were forced to shrink and get narrower. The second skill? Massive big brain energy. Our ancestors discovered that brains were overpowered, so our skulls started inflating like balloons with every generation. And there's your bottleneck. The delivery tunnel kept getting narrower, but the cargo kept getting bigger. At this point, evolution was left with two terrible choices. Either make the pelvis wider, but then you'd waddle around like a depressed duck and get instantly clapped by a saber-toothed tiger. Or make the brain smaller, which would mean self-nerfing our only superpower and wiping out all those hard-earned intelligence stats. So, evolution pulled a classic trust me bro move. He said, since the fully developed product is too big to fit through the door, let's just ship it early. And that is why every single human baby is technically a premature birth. Biologists calculated that based on our brain size, a human fetus would actually need to stay in the womb for 18 months to reach the same maturity level as a newborn chimpanzee. But if that actually happened, the baby's head would be so massive it would cause a fatal bottleneck that even ancient Egyptian gods couldn't save you from. So, at the exact moment the baby's skull is about to compromise the structural integrity of the birth canal, the system force quits and ejects the baby. This creates the infamous fourth trimester, the first 3 months of a baby's life. They are incredibly fragile, entirely dependent, and constantly eating because they are essentially completing an assembly line that was supposed to happen inside the womb. But there is something even stranger about humans. Even today, babies still behave as if they expect a whole crowd to care for them. A baby's cry isn't designed to summon just one person. It's designed to alert a whole group, because throughout most of human history, there was never just one caregiver. This unfinished state essentially forced the social gene into humanity. Humans aren't like chimpanzees who raise their offspring solo. We are cooperative breeders. During 300,000 years of wilderness survival, raising a baby was never a single-player game. It was a highly complex, community-wide defense system. In the rainforests of the Congo, a baby is cared for by an average of 14 different people every 8 hours. The infant is constantly passed from hand to hand, never left on the ground, never losing physical contact, because in primitive logic, being left alone meant you wouldn't survive the night. Evolution even invented another biological miracle for this exact reason: menopause. In the animal kingdom, most creatures die shortly after losing their reproductive capabilities. Yet, human females can live for decades after menopause. Biologically, this makes absolutely no sense unless they are a strategic asset to the entire system. This is known as the muddy-eared grandmother hypothesis. An elder digging up root vegetables under the African sun to feed her grandchildren was often the only reason the tribe didn't starve. To prevent these fragile creatures from becoming predator snacks, evolution equipped babies with two hardcore biological cheats. First up is this transport response. Have you noticed that when you pick up a screaming baby and start walking, their heart rate drops instantly and they quiet down? That's not some warm, fuzzy mother-child connection. That's a predator evasion reflex honed by 300,000 years of running away. Deep inside the baby's brain, an alarm is screaming, "Stay quiet or we're both getting eaten by a leopard." Eventually, we learned to use fire to drive back the night. We built shelters and used civilization to manufacture a controlled world. We began to rely on culture and experience rather than raw biological instinct. Anyway, jump back to today. One mother, one room, one baby. Quiet, exhausted, and completely overwhelmed. No grandmother, no tribe, no shared burden. We call this isolation normal life. But from an evolutionary standpoint, this is an unprecedented, highly dangerous ecosystem error. When you find yourself exhausted, anxious, and lonely in your apartment at 3 a.m., it's not because you're failing as a parent, and it's certainly not because you're weak. It's because your body and your genes are attempting to tackle a task that, for 300,000 years, no single human was ever expected to do alone. Because in 300,000 years, no human baby was ever raised in isolation. Never, not even once. So maybe the question has never been, how do we raise a child? Maybe the real question is, how did we ever convince ourselves that we could do it all alone? If your current parenting life feels like a brutal game of wilderness survival, that's because it literally is. Go thank that neighbor who watches your kid for an hour. That is your ancestral survival tech at work. That is how we stayed alive. Smash that subscribe button and we'll see you in the next video.